We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The VUU, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message. Hi, I am Aisha Hauser, and I am 1/3 of the lead ministry team of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. Welcome to The VUU, Voices of Unitarian Universalism, or as Kiana Dene Perkins lovingly calls us, the VUU. I am coming to you from the land of the Coast Salish people, the Duwamish, also known as Seattle, Washington. And the weather is rainy here because that's what we do here in the Northwest. And given the state of the world, I'm actually pretty thankful for rain. Although I don't sneeze at the sun. I love when it's sunny too. So I am very excited about today's show. We have members of the UUA Nominating Committee, one of whom, Tim Atkins, was here when the VUU was a seedling and did tech for some first episodes. So I will go to our co-host first, and then we will do UU Roundup, which is sometimes super interesting. And we will have an interesting conversation about the UUA nominating process. Somebody's giggling. I hear you. Chris, where are you? How are you? I miss you. Oh, and next week's GA. OMG. General Assembly. How did I forget that? Chris.
Chris is not here, so you got me instead. It's Michael Tino joining you from. Thank you for those who are not Facebook friends of mine. My 50th birthday was yesterday, so I got my AARP card and my Shady Pines retirement home keychain. Still don't know who sent it to me. The return address was from Dorothy Spornak. Um, I can't even make that up. So greetings from Peekskill, New York, in the Hudson Valley of New York, a little bit north of New York City, the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger bands of the Lenape Nation, where it is a cool, gray, rainy spring day. It is really lovely, and I am getting set to head across the continent, like many people are, to the Pacific Northwest. I got my GA haircut. Um, Althea Smith, learning fellow at the CLF, wondered why I shaved my entire head, and I told her that the sides are short so that it's nice and cool for summer. And I told the hairstylist that I was tired of pretending that I had any hair left on the top. So whatever she did, it needed to look like I wasn't pretending I actually had any hair left. Um, because now I'm 50 and my last fuck has disappeared. DC Fortune, how are you?
Oh, speaking of last fucks disappearing, yeah, behold the field where my fucks grow. See that it is barren, and there is no plan to replant. I am coming to you from Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, which is a little town just south of the confluence of the west and north branches of the Susquehanna River, which is, home to the Susquehanna First Nations people. And it is not unlike Michael. It's kind of gray. It's not very cool. We're in that like humid, sticky stuff that like wants to be humid. If it gets 2 more degrees hotter, it's just going to be miserable out there. And I am excited because I close on my house tomorrow. So yay! That is. Psychologists say that buying a home is one of the 5 most stressful things a person can do in their lifetime, right up there with getting married or having a child or losing a loved one. Michael has a stick. I want to know what the stick's about, Michael. This is a little alarming. What you all can't see on the screen is that Michael. All right, I'm not going to say anything. So let's go back to Aisha. Rescue me from myself, please.
So thank you, DC. And before we get to our very special guest, I got a haircut. So I feel, Michael, today that I think a lot of folks are getting haircuts. So part of UUA Roundup, in addition to General Assembly happening both in Portland and all over the world, because we have, the last I heard, about 1,500 remote attendees, and I think about 1,400 in person. So it is absolutely hybrid. And no, we're not using the word hybrid. We're using multi-platform, I believe. So in addition to that, we have folks in our denomination who are still 5 years after the supremacy teach-in arguing about the words white supremacy and putting out some really even on TikTok, the words white supremacy culture are pretty mainstream, and there's an understanding of what we're talking about when we say white supremacy culture and the system in which we are operating in. So can you put both DC and Michael back on, and the three of us can talk about, there's a lot of information that is, people can say whatever they want. For a group of people that are crying that their free speech is being impeded on, I'm reading a lot of their words. Much of it is lies and simply not the truth, but yet I don't, it's astonishing to me that when you self-publish a book and websites, that somehow you're like, I can't say what I want to say, and yet are saying what you want to say.
What? Yeah,
Well,
no,
it's astounding to me. It shouldn't be astounding, and it is astounding at the same time that there are folks within Unitarian Universalism who have staked out a particular position that is based in reactivity, and it is based in fragility, and it is based in a nostalgia for a time in Unitarian Universalism that never existed. And we've talked about this on The View. And it's based in, at this point, a willful misrepresentation. Because it's not accidental anymore. It's a willful misrepresentation of what we are trying to do. By making Unitarian Universalism a liberatory force in the world, and what we are trying to do in anti-racism and anti-oppression work, and what we are trying to do in recognizing that we live in a culture that is profoundly steeped in centuries of white supremacy. Because we do, right? So at this point, it's a willful misrepresentation. It can't be anything else, because so many people have, including you, Aisha and Chris, have spent so many hours and so much emotional and physical labor actually explaining what's going on to people, that if they've not understood it yet, it's because they don't want to. And at this point, these folks have resorted to gaslighting. To saying things like, "Oh, I never said that," and like, yeah, you did. You said it. We've got it on video. We've got it on your own website. We've got it on, wherever. And it's just,
well, and I think, yeah, and
welcome
like
back,
you said,
Chris.
it's not a. I'm back, hey folks. Yeah, it's not even just a willful misunderstanding, right? It's a willful misrepresentation, right?
Yes.
It's a willful misrepresentation of what we have said, what is being said. The thing that got me really hot today was this meme that somebody on that website generated, which shows a still from the Unite the Right rally, and then a still from a UU congregation, and one of it's saying, "This is white supremacists, this is not." And I was in Charlottesville. I was one of the clergy present on that line directly in front of those people that are in that photo. And I was there when people were killed. I was there when we were, the only people protecting us was us. And to somehow think that I don't know the difference between what white supremacists are and white supremacy culture is just, it's so wrong. Like it's so heinous to try and gaslight people of color into thinking that we don't know what white supremacy looks like, and that we can't identify it for ourselves, that I need a white man to come in here and tell me about oppression and tell me about what oppression looks like. I mean, the only thing that he can identify for me are the maker of the hoods, right? Like, I don't need some white dude coming in here and telling me what white supremacy culture and what white supremacists look like. I got plenty of that. I've stood on the lines, and I will put my credentials up against anybody else's credentials any day.
Amen and ashe. And so I wanted to honor that we have two guests, and one of them has to leave soon. So I do want to, we can actually come back to this maybe the last 15 minutes of the show. It feels like there's a lot to say about it. So I, at one point in my UU career, was chair of the nominating committee. So I know the process intimately and well, and I'm super excited to introduce two members of the nominating committee. Carrie Stewart is the incoming chair of the UUA Nominating Committee, where she served going on 3 years. She previously served the Journey Toward Wholeness UTC Committee is a lifelong UU and member of the First Unitarian Church of Dallas, and professionally she owns One Worlding Consulting, focusing on intercultural communication and DEI training. Tim Atkins, friend and colleague and religious educator. Tim Atkins is the director of Lifespan Religious Exploration at the First Unitarian Church of Oklahoma City and has been a professional religious educator for 9 years. He's previously served on the UUA board and the UUA Appointments Committee and now serves as the incoming co-chair of the UUA Nominating Committee. Welcome, Tim and Carrie. And I would love you both to start and talk about the process, talk about kind of how folks find you, how you find folks, and go from there. And welcome. And I hope to see you both either virtually or in person next week. So yay, welcome to the VUU.
Well, thanks so much for the invitation and for having us.
Tim, you want to start?
Oh, Carrie, why don't you start us off? Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Thanks so much for having us. Mm-hmm. Oops, me too. Uh-oh.
Keep going, Carrie.
You're good. We can hear you.
Yeah, we are happy to be here to talk about nominating in the UUA. We are a committee of the UUA, independent of the board, and our job is to fill about half a dozen committees in the UUA, and also find and vet candidates for the Board of Trustees. And so we search high and low for leaders in our denomination, folks with some experience, not only in their congregation, but hopefully some national experience. And we have a process of them submitting applications. We review them. We review their experience, interview them, check references, and we try to fit the best candidates for each position, according to their desires and skills that are needed, and put the slate together at every GA that the General Assembly votes on. So that's it in a nutshell. Tim, what do you have to add?
Sure. So thanks to CLF for having us on to talk about the nominating committee and processes and all sorts of fun governance related work, right? So the UUA Nominating Committee is elected by the General Assembly, which means we are directly accountable to the General Assembly. We have a sibling committee known as the Appointments Committee, which is like the exact same work, folks, but they are accountable to the board for the board appointed committees. We are accountable to the GA for the elected committees. So that's kind of the big difference between these two committees. But we have a good relationship with them, folks. It's not like an adversarial relationship or anything like that. So our authority derives from the bylaws and derives from General Assembly. So as Carrie mentioned, there are about 6 or 7 different elected committees. You can, if you really want to, look them up in the UUA bylaws or on the UUA website. But we put out nominations for any elected committee of the association. So in terms of recruiting applicants, right? So we have a volunteer interest form that's always up. If you Google UUA volunteer, I think it's the first thing that pops up. And by all means, if you are interested in service, fill out a general interest form, and either someone from the nominating committee or the appointments committee will reach out to you and talk with you and chat with you about what are you interested in? What are your skills? What are your passions? Where might you best serve in our association? And so we try to keep a good work, this is not like an adversarial relationship. We're all working together, just trying to find the best people for the best spots that they want to do and would be great at doing, and to make sure that they have the support once they get there. Sure, Michael.
So, I'm wondering if I'm someone out there in Unitarian Universalism who wants to serve our association in a wider capacity than just my congregation. Do you work with the appointments committee to do sort of leadership development to say, listen, it might not be right for you to serve on the UUA board like this year because it would be good for you to get this experience first. What's the kind of leadership development pathway?
So I hear two different parts of that question. So let me tackle each of the parts. One is a bigger question about leadership development in the association, which frankly, we need to be doing a better job at. There is a big question about who owns leadership development in the association. Is it more of the professional staff? Is it the board? Is it the nominating committee? Who owns this? So we have been, every so often, this leadership development question kind of pops back up in our leadership mindset, and it is back active in our mindset right now. And so the board, the nominating committee, appointments committee have been having some regular meetings to talk about some of the bigger questions. And I know the board is looking at how we do leadership development as the association. So part of this is bringing all the folks together. You know, when we lost the districts, we did lose some of that late leadership development process. And so we can find a way to help train, recruit, and maintain these leaders who are interested in serving outside their denomination. Carrie, anything you want to add on that part?
Thank you.
This conversation, to Tim's point, was happening. So I was trying to remember what year I was on, maybe 2015 until 2018. I was on the nominating committee, and we were talking then about especially supporting folks who are nominated, who are elected, and folks from with target identities. And one thing I want to say that I'm not sure if either of you touched on, and apologies if you did, and I was thinking about things that annoy me in Unitarian Universalism, so apologies. What folks need to know is when you apply, you write down your references and we call them. So when we say folks are vetted through the UUA process, it is not just, hey, you're my friends and I like you, and therefore I'm going to sign a bullshit. It's not a bullshit petition, it's a real petition. Okay, I'm going to. It's that we actually have, we say here, everyone gets the same form, everyone gets asked references, and what we spend a significant amount of time doing is dialoguing with each other as a committee, and I'm sure you all are doing the same, but there are references and there is checks and balances. So I think people underestimate the importance of that. And thank you, Tim, to make the point, the nominating committee is not working at cross purposes. Like, we're a faith that is working together to up with the hard things to move forward. And so this whole, we can disagree and have tension, but to have what feels a little bit like all out battles because some want a country club and some don't, but some want this to actually be a faith. Anyway, so references is what I meant to say with all those words.
In addition to the reference checking, as part of our process, we also run names by the UUA staff and regional staff, because sometimes they know problems in the congregation. And if they are professional staff, we'll check with the credentialing bodies to make sure. And so in addition to just calling references, we're doing some independent vetting just to make sure these folks are the folks who should be serving. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, and when we check references, we don't just say, tell us all the wonderful things you do, that this person has done, but we say, where were their challenges? Where did they seem to struggle? So that we're aware, and if necessary, help support. And by the same token, our goal is not just to plug in names on a slate so that we say, okay, we filled that UUA committee, we've done our job. And because for me personally, some of my greatest experience in Unitarian Universalism has been serving on these denominational committees. Some of the greatest spiritual growth that I've experienced has been on these committees. So I'm really interested in providing these opportunities for Unitarian Universalists to experience the same thing. So there's that piece of it as well.
And Mike, just to backtrack to the second part of your question from 5 minutes ago or so, if there is someone who applies for a certain committee and we don't think they may be the right fit, then we will absolutely talk with the appointments committee or other committees and try to find the best fit for them. Absolutely. We did that multiple times this year.
And I think, one of the things that I really appreciate about the nominating committee is the commitment that you all have to balance, like to not have any, kind of monolith of lens or perspective. That's one of the things when I was on the UUA Board of Trustees, I really respected about that is that not everybody who was on the board, even though the board was nominated, each individual nominated by the same nominating committee, had the same lens. There really was different folks coming from different lived experiences and different kinds of Unitarian Universalism that were at the table.
Yeah, Chris, that's really true. And starting with our own committee, right? So we did not have a full slate for even our own committee. We still don't. And part of our discernment is that we want to create balance, equal number of lay leaders and professional, religious folks, for example, race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, all of the measures of difference and diversity. We want to create that balance so that we have that, the benefit of that varied experience. And in fact, we took it upon ourselves this past year to actually dive into the Commission on Institutional Change report, Widening the Circle of Concern, and take it chapter by chapter. We created our own learning community so that we could try to embody those recommendations in the work that we do, from the get-go, and helping to promote that in the folks that we interview.
And I want to stress one of the things that we look at when we're talking about balance is also geographic.
Tim, first of all, I want to say.
One second, Aisha, then I'll toss it to you.
I just want to say I love your glasses, but go ahead, go on with geographic balance.
I love these glasses too. Happy Pride, by the way, everybody. Geographic balance matters a lot to us as well, and both for all the committees and our own committee too. That's absolutely a facet that we look at. And so even though the board has shifted from a decade ago when we had 30 trustees and every district had a trustee, we are still paying attention to that geographic balance as well.
I appreciate just the intricacy of the puzzle that you all are putting together as the nominating committee, because I served on the UUA board. I served a term on the UUA board as the Metro New York District trustee. I was the last Metro New York District trustee, so I served till the end of the district trustee period, and it was impossible being on a board that huge. It was impossible, and with 30 people, or 26 or whatever it was, you could be pretty sure that somebody had like finance experience and somebody had HR experience. And right now, like you're looking at a smaller board that can actually do work because they're a smaller group, but you need to think about identity and experience and professional qualifications and geography, and also the skills that are necessary to be a board member: policy writing and bylaw writing and monitoring and linkage and like all the things that are necessary to be a board member. So it's an intricate puzzle that you all are putting together. I just great kudos for that.
Thank you, Michael. And one aspect of that is we can find the right person, but we could be setting them to a committee that is set up for them to fail and not succeed in the beginning. And so we want to make sure that we are sending applicants to healthy areas and healthy committees that can appreciate and welcome their leadership, rather than having them hit barriers immediately from the get-go. And that is absolutely a problem within our denomination.
Yeah.
Thank you for naming that you're looking at that. I appreciate that too.
Well, folks, I do want to thank you for the invite. I need to go because our church here is having a staff appreciation lunch today. And so for all of those who may not work for a congregation watching this, staff appreciation lunches at the end of the program year are a lovely thing. So thank you. And thank you all.
See you soon.
Have fun. Thank you, Tim. Oh, Carrie, I understand you have a new website. Tell us.
We do. The UUA contracted with an outfit, and the website is called Breezy, and it keeps all of the applications that are submitted from that link on the UUA website. all the applications are submitted there, and we can see sorted by category of interest, whether it's general interest or they want to serve on the nominating committee or on the board or on the GA planning committee, what their interests and experiences are, so that the UUA staff, nominating committee, and appointments committee can all review those applications, and we can have conversations online about where we think those people will best fit. One more distinction I want to make about nominating and appointments is nominating has kind of a season, although the difference between recently and Aisha, when you served, is that since we weren't meeting in person, we've had monthly meetings for the last 2+ years. So we're meeting constantly and to talk about the different applications. Appointments, they have to work kind of year round, right? Because when there are vacancies in any position, they need to fill those as well as bring up appointments, after GA. So we'll all look at all those applications. We'll kind of decide, okay, who needs what when? And where do the folks have that experience and qualifications to kind of fit that role? And so there are different columns in the process. So there's interest, applicant, interview, references, offer, candidate. And we can move folks all around on there. And so we have a very good snapshot, a picture at any one time of our process. So it's cool.
So I had a question that I asked in the chat that I think would be well served to speak out loud in this space, and that is occasionally people who have allegations of misconduct of one kind or another, whether it's bullying or financial misconduct or sexual inappropriateness, all kinds of things, volunteer for a position. And how do you sort those out? Because I know that even I'm thinking in congregations, there is still this shame and this secrecy that happens. So how do you sort of tease that out to find out, is this person safe? Is this person, like, what's going on? How do you make sure that they don't get into a place where they have a position of authority or power where they really shouldn't?
Yeah. So the first check is the reference, right? And that may turn up something. But the sort of hard stop is we consult with UUA staff. Now, they should have records on any clergy persons who are applying and other religious professionals, religious educators or administrators. Admittedly, I think that falls off to a certain extent. There are more established processes for some roles than others. And of course, we really don't have the comparable thing for lay people, when they apply, which we're working with congregational life staff to develop sort of a rubric and a set of processes whereby we are able to check on applicants to see if they have participated in non-covenantal behavior that's been problematic. So it's an ongoing process.
Carrie, I have a follow-up question, if I may, because I know when I was serving, the fact that the list before it is finalized of those nominating committee wanted to move forward, the list would be sent to Ministries and Faith Development, but that was not transparent. And so one of the things that there was a lot of energy around, and I was definitely on there saying, well, at least people just need to know that that's part of the process. We don't need to say to people, it's confidential in that we're not going to smear anyone, but it definitely happened more than once when I was on, that folks were like, hey, this person's in the right relationship, or this person, and I didn't need to know that, and I never knew the details. It wasn't like, it's just like, okay, this person, they were very diplomatic about it, like, not now, or whatever it is. So I guess my question is it still transparent to at least those applying that part of this process is not only reference checks and but also that you know, we will, or that the nominating, no longer part of the nominating committee, haven't been for years, that you all will basically check with UUA staff. I mean, I think it's important to do. I also think it's important that people know that as they're applying.
I agree. And I honestly don't know the answer. I'm making a note, and I'm going to check on that to make sure that is clear to applicants, that they know that their information is going to be checked. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. I know it toward the end of my tenure it was there because I wasn't comfortable doing it without at least putting it on the application. But yeah, so you're welcome. And I think that's because, again, I think it's an important part of the application, and I'm not at all against it. I'm just, what made me queasy was that it was happening and no one knew it was happening. And I'm like, we need to just let people know, because I think that's part of, you know, transparency. And then,
yeah, we have had discussions about transparency in general about this process. And yeah, it's definitely one of our working points to be as transparent in the process as possible, you know, while preserving, you know, a modicum of confidentiality on the part of applicants.
I mean, I think what do you want folks to know about the process? What would be helpful to support your work that you want folks to know?
Speaking for me, again, I think it would be great for people to know that it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to serve the wider denomination of Unitarian Universalism, and that while it does take work and time, and sometimes you experience frustration, and sometimes, you know, it's not always great to see how the sausage is made, as they say, but more often than not, it's very fulfilling as part of your spiritual development, part of the service that we're called to do as Unitarian Universalists. And so if anyone is out there who gets a lot of fulfillment from serving their own congregation, then they really should consider serving in the wider denomination, because we have great opportunities and there's a lot of great work that's going on and needs to be done.
I've got another question, and that is, I can imagine that there are people who really want to do a thing, and maybe through some part of the process, you decide that they're not the best person to nominate for this position. Have you ever had somebody who really wanted that, didn't get the nomination, and then went around and ran like I don't know how it is, like, is it a petition or a write-in candidacy? I'm not sure the language for that. Has that ever happened, or do these other like write-in candidates sort of just appear out of the ether, having avoided this whole process?
So I can't speak to that with 100% authority. There was a transition time, you know, from the old system to this new system of Breezy, and we lost some applications, I think, in the process. And you're also testing my memory. So, and you know, this is only my third year. So I'm aware, I'm not conscious that that has happened, but it certainly could have.
Because it seems like, and honestly, I don't pay that much attention to insider baseball when it comes to this stuff, but it seems like it's not infrequent that there are write-in candidates that seem to be otherwise entirely removed from Unitarian Universalist leadership in any sort of systemic fashion, right? These people sort of come from out of the blue, sort of our own version of that guy with the boot on his head, you know, him.
Right.
Dermot Supreme. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So like, does it happen like that, or is it just sort of disgruntled, I didn't get this, I'm gonna run meh?
Yeah. So, okay, correct me. I'm going to frame it like this. So, are we getting applicants where if they don't get appointed or nominated or selected to be nominated as a candidate for a committee, do they then turn around and run a petition? And I'm really not aware of that. Or is it the case, and this is my observation, is that none of these folks currently have gone through this application process. They haven't gone through, applying for a position, submitting answers to questions on the application, submitting references that can be checked, volunteering to have an interview and putting themselves forward for a position. So they have not gone through that process.
So this is essentially like the Ross Perot, Ralph Nader sort of thing, where I don't necessarily have any experience, but I think I can do this because I'm a zillionaire or whatever. So I'm going to put my name on the ballot. Okay. Well, I mean, because that's telling. If you've never worked with the system, how on earth do you think you're going to come in as one person or two people and say, oh, y'all are doing it wrong? Like that's really not going to be helpful. That's not about diversity of opinion or diversity of viewpoint. That's about just putting sand in the gears for the joy of listening to things go crunch. It seems like.
Yeah,
that is such an important point.
That I know because you're in a position where you can't. But to me, that's what it feels like. Aisha can talk about it, though.
I'll speak. I could talk about it. So I do want to answer, because it's a two-part question, it feels like. In my tenure, we did have a case where a person wasn't nominated and they ran by petition. Now, because there were spots in the committee, they ended up winning and it wasn't an issue. But in terms of, here's what, and this is coming from me, so I want to be clear, this is not coming from anyone currently on the nominating committee. One of the most unhelpful things that I've seen happen, not just nationally with UUA, but also in congregations, running because you're angry and simply disrupt a system is part of what has been unhelpful in the United States. It's part of like this annihilation mentality. Like, I need to destroy you. I need to, we're a faith community. We're not a fucking football game. This isn't, Unitarian Universalism is a faith that one hopes is not stagnant. And in order for us, we're young. 1961 was when we became a thing, right? And so revelation not being sealed means we grapple with the hard things. We want to do, being Unitarian Universalists, I'm so proud of the folks who have been super public about saying, we want people of all identities, especially those with target identities, young people, to be the center of this faith. That we are not a country club, that, I've heard things like, you go do another faith and leave us alone and leave Unitarian Universalism. This isn't a country club. I've also been told that using the language country club is a microaggression. I've literally been told that by white people. Give me a fucking break. Like this, hand to God. So what I'm saying is we have an opportunity to live into more than we have who we say we want to be. We want, as a faith, to grapple with the hard things. We don't have a creed, but we do have the container of saying the hard things. And when 5 years, the idea that right now we're going to have a white supremacy teach in part 18, sure, let's do it. But this was already talked about ad nauseum in 2017, quite publicly. I think it was in the New York Times or Washington Post. One of them talked about the Unitarians, talking about white supremacy culture. Like, give me a break. Michael, to your point, this is now willful. It is now being weaponized, and it's cruel. It's cruel to say to people, you don't belong here because I don't want to be uncomfortable. The other part of it that needs to be said is this is a fight for resources, which was said on YouTube. I'm not naming any names, but that was said, that the group that is wanting to make noise, wanting us being those of us who want a liberatory Unitarian Universalism to go away, want the money. Like, who's going to get the money is what I heard. And I'm like, wow, this isn't even about Unitarian Universalism. This is about centering ego and wanting money so that you can keep your country club. And I'm part of a faith. I'm part of wanting liberation. And so I get super frustrated and, I mean, disappointed at best, but it's also, we're all people and humans. So hearing this shit is so, I mean, I'm using the word disappointment, but you know, I have more choice words. But Michael and DC, I know, Carrie, we're going to keep you off because this is, I know you can't in your role say anything, but I just think we need to, I was one of the people mistakenly thought that if we ignored those who want to make UUism great again, they would go away. And they're doubling down of lying, of misrepresenting what has been happening, and cruelty. And that's what I'm going to say. That y'all are on, those of you running by petition, those of you who are on this side of democracy and bullshit, you don't want democracy. You simply want your country club. You don't want to grapple with what's hard. And I have news for you. The world's a fucking dumpster fire. And so Unitarian Universalism can be a place of community building and fight for liberation.
So I want to say something back to sort of the skill of nominating committees. Because I really want to lift up. I really want to lift up that the nominating committee is not like a random bunch of people who throw darts at people's names, right? That they are highly skilled and highly engaged and looking for particular qualities. And in my experience doing that sort of work, I served on the presidential search committee, the first presidential search committee, just for full transparency. One of the things you look for in candidates is the ability to engage in a constructive critique of what's going on that can help you change the things that need to be changed and keep the things that need to be kept. We had candidates come before us we asked them, like, engage in that constructive critique of the current UUA administration. And we had candidates come before us and said, I love everything that the current administration is doing, and I would just do more of it. And we had candidates come before us and said, I hate everything that the current administration is doing, and I would change everything. And like, it's sort of like, figure skating, you get rid of the high judge and the low judge, or diving, right, at the Olympics, right? You get rid of the 9.5, you get rid of the 5.5. We needed to find people who could engage, like say, oh, I see where like white supremacy culture is at work in this particular part of the bylaws. And here's an idea of how I might come at changing that. And here are the people that I would be accountable to in that change work. And here is a process that I've found useful, right? And like, if you can think like that, then like you go to the top of the podium, as it was. So, like, it's
complexity of thought, Michael.
Yeah,
is that what
you have to be able to
are you
hold
talking about
complexity
complexity of thought?
Well, you have to be able to hold complexity of thought. You have to be able to critique an institution that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to be able to listen to people who can critique an institution that you love. And you have to be able to work with people to make the change that needs to be changed. Right? You have to work with people. Like, I love, DC, the way you put it. Like, you put sand in the gears just for the joy of hearing the crunch. Like, sometimes we need to stop stuff, but we don't stop stuff just for the sake of blowing it all up, right? We stop. So
I think Carrie might actually have something helpful to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so drilling it down, to the nominating committee, just speaking for ourselves, we want to make sure we're aligned in our goals. And again, our goals are just not the surface, plug those slots on the slate. What we do in our work is important as how we do it. right? So we spend time developing a covenant among ourselves so that we can create a container where we can talk about differing views and different perspectives and give ourselves the space to come to agreement on how to move forward. You know, and we have agreements about how we're going to behave with one another and how we're going to commit to doing the work. So, and I think those things are really important if we expect, you know, to come out with a slate that is helpful to not just the workings of the UUA, but as a contribution to Unitarian Universalism. You know, we have to start with ourselves. And so that's the work that we try to do. And this has been, the last couple of years have been a building year. You know, when there were 3 of us who joined, what year is this? 2019, I guess it was. And there were only 2 people left on the nominating committee, you know? So we have been rebuilding to try to create this.
I'd like to mention just how. Go ahead, Aisha.
No, go ahead. I'll go after.
I just wanted to mention how different the UUA nominating committee is from nominating committees that we often see at congregational levels, which seem to operate more in the pounce and capture method. You know, somebody left the room, let's nominate them quick before they come back, right? Like I was on a pride committee where that happened once. Like, just don't go to the bathroom during a meeting because you come back and you're in charge of something, right? But that's often how our congregations operate. And so I think there might be some disconnect with people at the congregational level being unable to imagine how complex and how developed the work of the nominating committee is at the denominational level when all they've seen is 3 very tired, frustrated people trying to get somebody to be secretary. You know.
Thank you, DC. You just gave me the topic of the workshop application I'm going to put in for GA next year.
Excellent. Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I think the larger meta piece of this for me is who we are at our core, because when I was recruited to be on the UUA nominating committee, it was exciting for me. I'm currently Loretta at the Liberal Religious Educators Association. I love serving this faith, volunteering for our faith, because I love this faith. Even when I get frustrated at people who say and do hurtful things, I don't hold it against Unitarian Universalism. I think compared to what's out there, especially, and the faith that I grew up with, having a faith that says, you are loved in fullness of who you are, is so, to me, central to how I want to live my life 100% of the time, even when I fuck up, having grace for myself and others. And when the white supremacy teach-in happened and Chris gives her apologies, her internet was not cooperating, so she will not, unfortunately, be able to be back on The View. But when Kenny Wiley, Chris, and I, with many, many others, it wasn't the 3 of us alone, but we were the kind of spearheading it. We didn't want to one of the biggest misconceptions by those who willfully chose to misunderstand. We weren't trying to take down a religion. And mind you, my response to that was, if Facebook posts is going to take down Unitarian Universalism, it needs to go. It was rather, we want the faith that we love,
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to live up to what we could be, especially in the United States. We need to have something counter to this evangelical fundamentalist bullshit that keeps everybody out. That has this, everything is conditional. What does it mean to be in a faith community that centers love? And it is not easy. It's a verb. How do we do this? It means we really do pay attention to who's being oppressed. We do pay attention to white supremacy culture and how it has impacted all of us, especially Unitarian Universalism. And the folks who are still fighting and trying to disrupt and be sand in the gears are using and saying some very cruel things, and are, really lifting up the horrors of history and saying it's happening to them, a group of white people who simply want to keep things exactly the same and don't want to move forward. And so I think the meta, to me, and why it happens that folks are, don't know what kind of place they have in terms of volunteering is, who are we as a faith? Who do we belong to, and what connects us? I hope that made sense. I'm thinking like the larger, the lack of adult faith development. I just need to tell you all, thank you. Carrie made that point in the chat. I do DEI work like you do, Carrie, in the secular world. I'm doing adult faith development. I can't call it that, but that's what it is. I do a reading, I create containers for people to talk to each other. And it's profound and really important, because there's not enough places in the United States society in general where people can come together and navigate we're facing some really hard things. I don't need to tell anybody here that, and I'm going to stop talking. We have 4 minutes left. Anybody else jump in? Because I'm going on and on.
Well, I wonder if Carrie has any last words. I wonder in particular if you want to lift up the other people who serve on the nominating committee with you, so that our viewers know who else is on this wonderful committee that is doing such great work.
Thank you, Michael. Yes to both. So we have with us Kalani Casella, who is our most senior member. We also have the Reverend Zachary Vinson from Townsend, Washington. We have Ben Gable, who's an administrator at Northwoods UU in Birmingham, Michigan. We have Christy Cardinal, who is a seminarian in Michigan. We have, who am I missing? I think that's it. We do have some folks who are on our slate. Deborah Gray Boyd, who many people know, serving for, I think, 8 years on the GA Planning Committee. And Courtney McKinney, who is formerly on appointments. Appointments and nominating do have some back and forth with their people who serve on those. So that's who's serving. But yes, to Aisha's point, and as a final point, we on the nominating committee are trying to practice our faith as we do the work. And, we are independent, right, of the board and of the UUA, but we do try to work in sympathy with, or in concert with, the strategy of the UUA administration and the strategy of the board, because we are all one faith, and we do want to be going, in the same direction. So I guess that's a general way of saying that.
Nominating committee. And can anyone hear me? Am I online? Okay. That's a great place to end, yep, Carrie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Well, we will be
great to see you.
Yes. We will.
Great to see you. Thank you.
We'll
Thank
be
you
at
to everyone.
GA next week, won't we?
We're going to be at GA. Thank you to Chris Rivera, who had to leave early, and happy birthday, Michael. And we'll see you next week in Portland, online and live. Thank you all so much.
God willing, and the creek don't rise. See you at GA.
All right.
Nominating will be there too.
Don't rise.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.